This is Star Wars Rebels Alert, the weekly podcast after show where we recap and discuss each and every episode of Star Wars Rebels Season 3. I'm your host, Tim.
I'm Troy.
And this week we're going to be doing something just a little bit different.
Slightly.
It's a little bit of hiatus in between episodes here. So we'll be coming back next week with a brand new episode of Star Wars Rebels. Imperial Super Commandos comes out next Saturday, and we will be coming back and discussing that. But with the hiatus, we thought it would be a good opportunity to go back and discuss a recent novel that's dropped that fits really well into the Clone Wars and Rebels timeline. And it's E.K. Johnson's Star Wars Ahsoka novel.
Yes. Great novel so far, right?
Fantastic. Okay. And what we're going to be doing here is really just kind of breaking down and talking about some of the highlights and giving you guys a little bit of insight as far as what we thought about this book from a reader's or more of a listener's perspective.
Yeah, you could say with the Audible download there, right?
Yeah. And it fits really well with the timeline that we're working with right now. Because last week we had an episode, The Last Battle, that discussed and picked up on some of the threads that were left dangling from the abrupt end of the Clone Wars.
Yes.
And this book does that exact same thing. It picks up on Ahsoka's story post Order 66 and even fills in some of the time gaps after her last appearance on Clone Wars.
Yes.
It sits well with the other episodes from Rebels that are going back and delving into the backstories of some of our main characters like Chopper and Hera and hitting on certain points that help us develop those characters, understand where they're coming from. And this book does a really good job of that for Ahsoka.
Definitely does.
So we're not going to kind of do a chronological breakdown of every single scene in this. We're going to talk about the important things, the things that matter for the Star Wars universe as a whole, as well as for Ahsoka.
Right. It's incredible what the team, Dave Filoni and those guys have done with her, because they introduced her in the Clone Wars movie that wasn't well received, and nobody really liked the fact that Anakin had a Padawan that no one ever mentioned before. Yeah. So she's grown a lot. When they brought her back in Rebels, I think that's when everyone was hooked.
Yeah,
and towards the end of Clone Wars, the story arc they gave her was pretty good. So she's been a fan favorite since.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were upset with her appearance in the Clone Wars because it took away from the Obi-Wan and Anakin story.
Yeah, especially because there's such a void with Revenge of the Sith, even though they did correct it throughout that series. But you're right, it did take away from the Anakin and Obi-Wan. Yeah,
I think they've really justified her existence in this universe with this book, her Rebels appearances, and what they've done kind of in the in-between times.
Yeah, they really have, yeah.
So this is the 11th canonical Star Wars novel that's come out in the last couple years.
Right.
And you and I are trying to keep up with a lot of these. And this is one that we really want to hit on. Mm-hmm. And it is a junior novelization.
Yeah.
Do you feel it had that junior aspect of the novel?
No, not at all. Yeah, don't let that fool you. Was it the YA rating? The young adult rating? No, the tone of this fits so well with the rest of the new canon that we've been getting with whether it's Claudia Gray's Bloodlines or Lost Stars, which you're currently reading right now. Lords of the Sith is obviously a little darker than that, but yeah, don't let the YA rating take you away from this book.
Oh, I'd have to completely agree with that. And because it's a bit shorter, it's a bit easier to get through.
Yeah, exactly.
And it almost feels like a couple episodes kind of smashed together of Rebels, of Clone Wars here.
Yes.
It's got that vibe to it, which I really like.
Yeah, it really does, actually. That's actually kind of one of my negatives in the sense that I felt like this book could have been captured in what you just mentioned, a couple, like a 3-story, 4-story arc on Clone Wars or a flashback in the Rebels. In a sense.
How great would that be if just a hiatus where you have kind of a Christmas break or whatever, and you have just this Ahsoka book developed into a 4-episode arc?
Yeah, I would love that.
Basic synopsis here. So Ahsoka finds herself kind of wandering around the Outer Rim, trying to stay off of the Empire's radar. So she's survived Order 66. And this is one of the big plot holes that was left open as far as how she ended up in Rebel Season 2 surviving Order 66. Because her whereabouts is pretty much unknown post-Clone Wars. And then we don't know what's going on during the Rebels time frame with her until she does show up as Fulcrum here.
Yes.
She still has this need, this want to be someone that's almost this heroism to her, right? She's never really lost that.
Mm-hmm. She keeps that.
And I feel like they've really matured her in this book. Like I said before, her appearance in Clone Wars annoyed me a bit in the early seasons because she had this like adolescence, this whiny teenager.
Yeah, very bratty. Yeah.
And this feels like a completely different character. Even though it's offset from Rebels by a few years, this feels like a very mature Ahsoka, the Ahsoka that we saw in Rebels.
Yeah, definitely on that path.
And she does find herself onto this planet called Rhyada, where she's kind of hiding out. She's a mechanic now.
Yeah.
And she eventually leads this community of farmers to rebel against the Empire once the Empire shows up and occupies this planet for its natural resources.
Yeah.
both from a farming perspective and a slaving perspective.
Yeah.
So we're going to go full spoilers here. So like I said, we're going to talk about some of the high points here and then just discuss where we think this all fits into and where this could point us as far as developing different ideas in Star Wars Rebels and maybe potential further on novels.
Right.
Some of the significant moments in here, and like I said, full spoilers for Ahsoka and for Rebels and for Clone Wars. We're going to kind of be jumping into everything here. We do see the end of the Clone Wars as far as Ahsoka's perspective is concerned, right? And it's this last interaction with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka that we see as she's on Mandalore fighting Darth Maul.
Yeah.
And not watching the Clone Wars, I was a bit confused coming into this because I assumed that they were just picking up off of an episode. But that's not the case, is it?
No. Basically, I guess they picked up on episodes that Dave Filoni and the team didn't get to quite finish because Clone Wars was cut short. So it's kind of cool that they get to call it back and, complete those episodes through a novel and better yet, even on Audible, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it appears that Obi-Wan and Anakin come to the aid of Ahsoka as she's found out that Maul is still alive and he's on Mandalore, and this massive battle is occurring.
Right.
With Rex in the 501st, Obi-Wan and Anakin show up, they give her lightsabers back, and then this fight happens during the prologue of this book, where we do see Darth Maul, and I love what they did in Rebel Season 2 with him calling her Lady Tano.
Right.
This is supposed to be an insult, and I never fully got that until this book.
Right. So cool.
Because she's not a master, she's not a Jedi, anything like that. So he's poking at her here.
Oh, yeah. Just tormenting her a little bit.
Yeah. And then we really see how she survives Order 66, because this is her last interaction with Anakin prior to Order 66. And he takes off to Coruscant from Mandalore because Palpatine's been kidnapped. And that leads directly into Revenge of the Sith.
Which is so good how they tie that together. Yeah.
We do see her successfully defeat Maul here and actually capture him. And then Order 66 is executed.
Yes.
And this is another great plot point where we see how Ahsoka survived Order 66, and it has a lot to do with Rex here, who's a big character in Rebels right now.
Huge, yeah.
And it's basically the two of them that conspire to fake each other's deaths.
Yeah.
And two huge things here. Rex takes another clone, puts his armor on him, throws him in a grave. They scribe a tombstone saying that he's killed Ahsoka Tano, which I guess is something that they were doing at the time, and then they put her lightsabers in.
That's
and
right.
so this is where we see her relinquishing her Jedi lightsabers, which is a big deal, right?
It's huge, yeah.
Once they've done that, they decide to go their separate ways, not have any contact with each other. And I really love how they did this. And in the novel, you really feel that impact of her relationship with Rex, which is picked up on in Rebels Season 2.
Yes.
So the start of this book, the prologue here, is immensely exciting, and it kind of gets you really riled up for this book. But then I feel it takes somewhat of a lull here, and it builds up this individualized story of Ahsoka. And it's not quite what we were thinking it was going to be. We had mentioned this in previous podcasts. It's a little different up until about, I would say, chapter 13.
Yes, that's right. It's because they set the tone so high with the Maul and Mandalorian and all that stuff, and then it gets, like I've said it before, very narrative driven, right? Where it's just kind of works in two ways. I mean, one, it's really cool because you really get a sense of Ahsoka. They really put you in her shoes, which is awesome. But at the same time, it gets a little jarring, a little slow, right, with the story. Yeah, and that's
that slow pace that I hear a lot of people have issues with. And because it started off so fast, you think that this is going to continue this pace. But I actually appreciate, now having finished the book, I appreciate that early phase of slowing it down, developing the character, and you get more connection, I think, to Ahsoka than you would if it was a rapid, universe-spanning battle where they're also focusing on developing other concepts and seeding other things for future novels or future, even live action or Rebels episodes or whatever. I think they do a really good job on concentrating on Ahsoka. This is really a book about Ahsoka. It doesn't take the opportunity to go and try to develop other things elsewhere. Where other books, even the Aftermath books, you see them using interludes to kind of let you know what's going on in other aspects of the universe. This is so focused on Ahsoka that you really appreciate what they're doing with the character here.
Yeah.
And one of the big plot points here is once she finds herself on Rayada, this kind of backwater world, actually it's a moon, and it's a farming community where they just simply farm. They're very simple people. And she's there hiding, and she figures, the Empire's not coming here, I'm fine. And then all of a sudden, the Empire shows up.
Yeah, not for her Ahsoka, just for reasons of their own. Right?
Yeah, and what did you think of the portrayal of the Empire here? We have to remember, this book is only taking place 1 year after Order 66 is executed.
Yeah.
So we're still living in a relatively new Empire world.
Yeah.
And they're using this moon as a planet for resources, like I said, for slaving, as well as growing the plants for the nutrient pills, which I'm reading Lost Stars right now,
Yes.
and that's dropped that these nutrient pills are preferred almost in a liquid sense or whatever, and it kind of ties in really nicely there. So it's something when I was reading Lost Stars, I'm like, this is great because this has been covered in Ahsoka
Yes.
about how they're growing it, and it's anyways kind
Those
of a
Easter
tangent
eggs
there.
are just sprinkled in. That's why you got to read all these books,
Yeah.
right? No, it makes sense what they've done with the Imperial Guards here, right? With the Stormtroopers, because they are new. And it's only been a year after Order 66, so there's going to be flaws in their systems.
Yeah.
And to see Ahsoka and the farmers kind of defeat them in certain ways a lot easier than they could do later on made a lot of sense throughout this book, right?
Yeah, because there's a lot of comments from Ahsoka about how clumsy they are and how poor soldiers they are when she's comparing them to the clones from the Clone Wars, right?
Right.
Do you think that they were too tyrannical here? That they were too harsh, being only that they're a year out? I get that when we're in the original trilogy, they've been around for 20 years, 2 decades almost, and you do get that sense that right now they're almost trying to project the OT Empire into this book, where I feel like it's a bit too much.
Yeah, I got that way too. Yeah, it's a little too much on the nose there.
Yeah, and just having the experience now from reading Lost Stars a bit, and you get a completely different perspective in that
Right.
book. And I feel like the universe was more embracing of the Empire at first.
Yes.
And it's only these pockets where you do have them being more relentless and using them as slaves that this starts to develop this rebellion, right?
Yeah.
And we get early seeds of the rebellion in this book as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's almost a bit too much Empire here. Like,
Yeah.
they're too, I don't know, relentless or tyrannical or whatever you want to call it. That it's just doesn't feel that way, because they develop somewhat of an antagonist through this early part of the book that's an Imperial officer, and he kind of gets dropped as we pick up kind of the main antagonist at the end of the book here,
Yes.
which is another great plot point that we'll discuss
yeah.
here shortly. Now, the characters on Rhaeada, I don't think they have a huge impact on the book. There's Kaden and a few others here that, again, there's great interaction with Ahsoka, and it helps develop her story. And then we have some off-world other characters, the Farties, which, again, is another great plot point that helps show who Ahsoka is and how she's developed and how she's continuing to not so much be a Jedi, but partake and act like a Jedi.
Yeah, and do some heroic things. I actually really appreciate the Farties. I liked what they did with those characters. I kind of wish that we had got more of them.
Yeah.
Especially with essentially a Force sensitive.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
And that's something that they don't really touch on that much in the original trilogy, and that is the fact that there's all these kids, all these people in the universe that are Force sensitive. And you do get this idea, at least from this book, that right after Order 66, Vader sent out his Inquisitors to hunt down these Force sensitive children or people, right? And it's interesting that they use a young child in this Farties clan that's developed through Ahsoka here, and kind of hitting on and exploring that a bit more. And I felt that they did a really good job there exploring these Force-sensitive children and what Vader's actually starting to do with these Force-sensitive individuals, and kind of develop this idea of the Inquisitors within this book.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because I'd like to know how old these Inquisitors would be, because if this is only a year apart from Revenge of the Sith, and these Inquisitors, I'd imagine, have to be at least over 16, 18 probably, right?
Yeah.
So were they once Jedis themselves? I mean, I know obviously the Grand Inquisitor was at one point, so yeah.
So we had an Inquisitor introduced in this book, the sixth brother. So this is our fourth brother or sister, and then the Grand Inquisitor as well that we've seen. I was a little confused because the description really makes him sound like the fifth brother.
Right.
And this big, tall, gray individual with these blue eyes and the helmet and all that. I was a bit confused. I actually had to go back and check to see which one of the Inquisitors actually appeared in Rebels here, because I couldn't quite grasp what was going on here. And what did you think of this character? Do you he was a bit clumsy?
Yeah.
It wasn't as menacing as, say, a Maul or something like that. Never really intended to be, I don't think.
No.
But did you like the inclusion of an early Inquisitor into this novel?
I did. Yeah. I really liked that. It furthered Ahsoka. You really get to appreciate her fighting skills, and that she was Anakin's Padawan, so she can hold it down with the two lightsabers. And you know what? The Inquisitor really shined for me when he had the moment where he basically took on the farmers himself, and he's using all sorts of Force powers, and he's using the Cyclone kind of lightsaber effect. Yeah. That was a great scene for him.
Yeah, in the caves and all that.
In the caves, that was great. But he was pretty, kind of forgettable a little bit. But he had his shine in here. I think a lot of people with Rebels are kind of done with Inquisitors. Yeah. So I think if we have to use 2 or 3 more of them. Yeah. So why not use them in novels and just sprinkle them in? Because I don't want to see them show up anymore on Rebels.
No, I agree with you, and I think it was a great way to connect up what happened in Rebels Season 2 with this book, and kind of understanding a bit about how, again, this idea of Force-sensitive people that are being hunted down, it makes sense that they fit into this book here.
Yeah, especially because, a callback going to Rebels Season 2, you see Ahsoka season 2, you see Ahsoka take on the 2 Inquisitors on her own, and she just handles them, right? So it's cool that you get this idea of how she's grown so much in the Force at that point. Yeah.
The Inquisitor here, the 6th brother, he becomes aware of Ahsoka when she finally uses her Force powers here. So she's so reluctant to use them because she doesn't want to either put other people in danger with her presence, and she doesn't want people to know who she is. And it's chapter 13 here. I remember texting you and being like, dude, I know it's slow. Get to chapter 13. Because this is when she uses the Force powers here in a big way.
Yeah.
I'm listening to this. I'm getting goosebumps as she's using it. And just this explosion of power. And she kind of wipes out a good chunk of the Empire that's there. I absolutely loved this scene. This is what made the book for me. And from this point on, I was fully invested in this.
Yeah, I was engaged. It was a very cinematic experience almost, right? Yeah.
So there's this eventual battle between Ahsoka and the Inquisitor. So it's seeded for a while here. We know it's coming.
Oh, yeah.
And leading into that, Ahsoka's collecting all these kind of tech pieces.
Yeah.
And this is something that's strung right through from her time on with the Fardies to her time on Raeda. And you always kind of get this kind of on-the-nose hit that this is something specific, right? It keeps touching on this. Why does she always have this bag of tech pieces? And these are pieces that have called to her in some form, and she talks about lining them up in certain ways, and it's really cool how they develop this, and eventually this becomes the components for her 2 new lightsabers here. The lightsabers that we see in Star Wars Rebels Season 2.
Yeah, they're becoming pretty iconic, I'd say, too, with the white lightsabers going on. Yeah.
And they really delve into some of the background on lightsabers here. Some of this interesting kind of lore that they're building within this new canonical universe. And the concept of the color of the kyber crystals. So Ahsoka goes on a bit of a mission here to Ilum to find her crystals again. So this is where she went the first time. She speaks of this idea that the crystals are calling to her, singing to her, and I really like this because this is something that I'm not completely familiar with, even in the EU sense, that the kyber crystals and how they choose their master, and then it's going out and seeking them and finding them, and then they go into the lightsaber, and this is what gives you your color, and this is what gives you your lightsaber, and they're their own individuals, right? And they really explore this in some detail in this book and really give you an idea why, one, the Siths or the Inquisitors, the dark side users, why their lightsabers are red.
Right.
And it's this concept that the stones are actually bleeding. So they've been pillaged, they've been taken, they've been stolen, and they've been corrupted by hate by the dark side. And this is why they're red. They bleed.
Yes.
What did you think of this explanation?
At first, I didn't like it at all. At first, I thought it was terrible. It kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But actually, over the weekend, I found something on Pablo Doglo talking about the origin of the whole thing. And I guess George Lucas himself never actually really liked the original idea of the crystals in the first place. So now I understand is that basically when they do construct them, you have to construct them in order for it to change. So my problem was always, okay, well, when Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, how come his lightsaber never turned red? How come it wasn't bleeding? But it's because you actually have to construct it.
Yeah.
So you can't just hold on to it and then it changes. So with that little explanation out the way, that makes sense to me. So I kind of do like it. And I do like the aspect of, it bleeds.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. And a quick little thing too, going back to where Ahsoka goes to was it Ilum? Oh yeah, that's actually from Old Republic.
Yeah.
That planet.
Is it?
Yeah. I'm playing the game right now, and I'm actually on that planet right now. So,
awesome.
Yeah, pretty neat.
This concept too, I think we're going to see revisited in Rogue One. Is this idea that the Emperor had occupied Ilum because it was mining these kyber crystals, right? It is a kyber crystal that powers the Death Star, a very large kyber crystal. Yeah. And I think there's an unproduced episode of Clone Wars where Obi-Wan and Anakin are stopping the Empire from attaining a large kyber crystal for a weapon.
That's right.
And spoilers for Rogue One here. You guys all know that I don't watch the trailers and all that sort of thing, but from what I've read a little bit from the early on trailers, this planet of Jeddah is another one of these almost Ilum kind of doppelgangers or replacements where there's a high concentration of kyber crystals there.
Okay.
And this is potentially why the Empire has occupied this planet or are invading this planet, and it's for the kyber crystals, and this connects all in with the Death Star on that. So we might be revisiting this similar concept in Rogue One in just a couple months here.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I think you can check out that episode even on YouTube or if you own the last season on Blu-ray, but it is unfinished like you mentioned, so it's kind of hard to watch.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
She does go to battle with this Inquisitor, and with no lightsabers, she just uses the Force. And again, she comments a few times here how clumsy he is. He's more of a brute force rather than a finesse type Inquisitor or Force user. And she ended up killing the Inquisitor here by overpowering him, and his lightsaber explodes in his face.
Yeah, which I thought was a cool one. Is an interesting death as opposed to just killing him with his own lightsaber or something. Is a nice route to go. Yeah.
It was a little different than we've seen before, right?
Yeah.
I was expecting her to be honest, to go to Ilum, get the kyber crystals, pop them into the lightsabers, come in and show up with their lightsabers. And it's cool that they went this direction where it was like, here, we're going to show something different here. A Jedi, or I'm going to say Jedi in quotes, without her lightsabers, using the Force. And this is something we see through this whole book, is that she uses the Force only when she has to.
Yes.
And this is a very important moment for her to use that. And then she takes the kyber crystals from this Inquisitor, and she says she's heard these call out to her before. So these, might have been something that were in the Jedi Temple, or they come from a Jedi that she was familiar with, that is no longer living. And she takes those crystals and she purifies them with the light side. And almost the white is an interesting color, right? Because it's kind of sitting in the middle a bit. I know it's an extreme black and white, but I feel like they're trying to hit here at her being in the middle.
Yes. Yeah.
And she does use the name Ashla through this, which it's again a bit on the nose. I think it's like, why would you use a light side term as your name when you're trying to hide yourself from being a Jedi? But I kind of like that they did use that. Again, it's nice that they're hitting on these aspects of the original scripts and the original work that George Lucas did, bringing some of that into this universe. So.
And and that's a great fight there, because that fight does so much for the reader or the listener, because you really get a sense of Ahsoka is so well trained that she doesn't even use her lightsabers to take on this enemy, and constantly she's dissecting this enemy, noticing things like his helmet's not all the way down, or little weaknesses and little flaws and chips in his armor where she can take this guy down. And I think she even mentions after defeating him that, if he did have his shield down, he probably would have survived that blast. So she's just an excellent combat fighter throughout this whole book. And
you really get a sense for how powerful she is. And at the end of Star Wars Rebels Season 2, when she goes up against Vader, having read this book now, I really believe that she could have really taken him to the extreme limit that she did, right? She's a very, very powerful Jedi.
Right.
And one of the other aspects that are explored in this book is the early stages of the rebellion and our man Bail Organa.
Yes.
He's showing up in almost every novel now that is pre the explosion of Alderaan, pre A New Hope, right?
Right.
And I'm loving his presence here, and he's a nice callback to the original trilogy, to Clone Wars, to Rebels, to everything.
Yeah,
right?
I love when this guy shows up in the books, whether it's Bloodlines or this book
Lost
here,
Stars.
right? Or Lost Stars. I love when they bring that back. And what a good piece he brings to this book.
Yeah, he does. And Ahsoka grabs his attention from afar because of her acts of heroism throughout Outer Rim territory, something that you don't necessarily see. And there's this idea floating around that it is a Jedi, and that there's interesting things going on with potential Force users. And Bail, having been close to the Jedi, one of the supporters of the Jedi, and one of the remaining people in the Senate that is almost actively rebelling against the Empire here.
Right.
And now, again, I'm going to bring this in again. Reading Lost Stars, you do see that how that's developed with Leia, with Bail, and how they're actively protesting against like this rule of the Empire. And you see the foundation of the rebellion being built here. And when they're called to Raeda to save the people of the planet from the Empire's rule, it might be one of the first canonical appearances of, I'm not going to say for sure, but of A-Wings, but at least a battle between the Rebellion and the Empire.
Right, yeah.
Like, this has to be one of the first battles, right?
Yeah, it must be, because even Lords of the Sith takes place 5 years after Order 66. So yeah.
Because this is about a year after.
A year after.
And we see how Ahsoka and Bail are able to organize very quickly and extract these citizens from Raeda. And I really appreciated this. And one thing that confused the hell out of me in this book
I was waiting for this.
was the continual reference to Captain Antilles.
Yes.
And eventually I did go back and do a little research, and it kind of clicked in my head. And I actually went back and watched the first part of Star Wars, because Captain Antilles is mentioned by C-3PO in R2-D2 when they're talking about, I think our former master was Captain Antilles. And so Captain Antilles actually makes an appearance in Star Wars A New Hope. He's the captain that is choked out and killed by Vader in the opening sequence on the Tantive 4.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is confusing, because I thought at first Bail was referring to Wedge Antilles.
Yeah.
Which is the prominent Antilles in the Star Wars lore,
right?
We
just had an episode of him on Rebels,
And that's what confused me, because I was like, these guys have done such a good job with their timelines and keeping up and making sure they're keeping track of characters and who's appearing here, who's appearing there.
Yeah.
And when they said, I'm going to drop this off to Captain Antilles, I was like, oh man, this is way out of sorts here, because we saw Wedge's first appearance and his joining of the rebellion just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was like, this makes no sense. And so going back and kind of refreshing my mind here of some of the characters, some of the almost unimpactful characters in the original trilogy, it all lines up as far as the canonical timelines, it all fits, and Captain Antilles is just the right-hand man of Bail Organa.
Yeah.
And I love that they tied that in, but it was confusing at first. It really threw me for a whirl here. Towards the end of this book, we do get this concept of Fulcrum coming to fruition here, something that was revealed in Star Wars Rebels Season 2, and a thread that's picked up in Season 3 as well. And it's almost this intelligence, this communication branch of the rebellion that Ahsoka points out to Bail and says, look, this guy, you got a huge hole here, and I'm willing to fill this if you help me out with the citizens on Raeda.
Yeah.
And she does fill that role, and they come up with the codename Fulcrum, which is great. Awesome callback. And we get kind of that reintegration of kind of her first appearance in Rebel Season 2 into this book. So we do see what's happened in that time frame there, and she's been part of the rebellion almost since its inception, right?
Yeah, so you'd have to assume she's been with the rebellion for, in Rebels Season 2, probably for at least 15 to 14 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a big piece of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
If this all lines
She's
up,
grown
right?
quite a bit then, so she must be about 32, 33 around that point. That's incredible.
And briefly at the end here, we get an appearance by the Grand Inquisitor. He's come to investigate what's happened on Raeda, and he pieces together the idea that this was a Jedi. We don't know which Jedi it is, but it is a Jedi indeed.
Yes.
And one thing that's always confused me, she is a very recognizable human, right? Any sort of description, Vader would cue on that immediately, I think.
Yeah.
And he calls Vader, and it's a nice call to Rebel Season 2 and this Grand Inquisitor and what they're doing, the hunting of the Jedi. And I really like that aspect there, that visiting just in a brief moment some of the more powerful characters that we do see come to their demise in Rebels.
Yeah, no, that's true. I kind of feel like this book needed it too, whereas I know you're reading Lost Stars, that book stands so well on its own 2 feet without hitting you over the head with all these characters that we've known, whereas this book I feel like it has to bring in Bail Organa, and it has to bring in the Inquisitors, and it has to bring in a droid that we all know, right? So kind of its strengths, it's kind of one of its weaknesses.
Yeah. I'd agree. I'd agree fully with you there. What did you think about this tease at the end, this Obi-Wan tease at the end?
See, that was really cool, but it kind of came out of nowhere.
I completely agree.
Right?
Yeah.
It was so cool. I loved what they did there. I would have loved to see that on the big screen. Hopefully we will one day. But it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the scene is here, we have Obi-Wan, he's on Tatooine, he's in deep meditation, he thinks he's at the bottom of his ability to go into this deep-seated meditation, and then he finds a way to go deeper. And this is when we get the reveal that we get contact with Qui-Gon, and he says to him, let go.
Right. Oh.
And I don't know, I agree with you, cinematically this would have been unreal.
Right.
Think about this as an after-credit scene to a film.
Oh my god.
See,
After
Ewan
Rogue
McGregor
One.
there.
Oh man, yeah.
Just like, and it seems that Lucasfilm or whomever is really seeding this idea of Obi-Wan all over the place. We see him in the comics, we see him here, everywhere. And I'm curious if they're trying to test the waters here in every aspect. Are they testing for an Obi-Wan book, an Obi-Wan movie?
Yeah, they're pulling these strings.
He's all over the place,
All
and
over.
I will not be surprised if we see him in Rebel Season 3 here at some point down the road. That was teased, I think, quite heavily for a few episodes, and I'm not going to be surprised if we see this tying in together again. And it's just a beautiful way to end the book.
Yeah,
and
it really
it's
was.
again out of nowhere, and it doesn't really impact this book at all. But it's a nice tease, and I'd almost consider it an after credit scene.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, completely agree.
So to wrap this up here, what did you think about this book? Do you recommend this book to our fellow Star Wars readers, listeners, fans?
Definitely, guys. You got to go out there and check this out. I mean, I know you guys must be watching Rebels, obviously, if you're listening to this. And you must have some kind of idea of the Clone Wars. And you owe it to yourself because it ties in both worlds so well. And it just establishes Ahsoka even more so to make her a fan favorite. It's a great, great read. It's not my favorite. I still put it maybe about 4, 5 on my list of these books. But all around, it's a great book, and it just gets you more insight of Ahsoka. It really does such a good job of putting you in the shoes of this Jedi and what it's like in those times of being a Jedi or the only Jedi.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
This is a fantastic book. It's a quick read, and I think it really benefits from that. I think trying to expand beyond what it did would really hurt this book and maybe make it drag a bit more. But it was a quick Ahsoka story. It kind of tied up some of the loose ends that we're curious about, both from the Rebels' perspective as well as from what happened at the end of the Clone Wars. It does a great job tying in the larger universe here, and like you said, I think that's one of its strengths, but it does lean quite heavily on that. So it doesn't stand on its own as well as some of the other books that we've read recently. But I'll fully give this a recommend. It did wonders for me for a Ahsoka fan. I'm so happy that I have her Funko Pop and her action figure and all that now.
Yeah.
And this is a character that, having met her demise, I think at least in Rebels Season 2, I really, really think this is a character that we're going to see more from, because there's a lot of timeline here still to build
Yeah, there's so much time. And you know what? My next thing is maybe we could get a video game out of this. I think it'd be really cool. EB Games, you make a collector's edition, you get the book, you get the game. There's about 14 years ahead. Control her with 2 lightsabers. You can have the Force Unleashed kind of engine going on. I think that'd be a really cool video game. So I'd be on board with that. Yeah.
Definitely. So get out there and get this book. Give it a read. Highly recommend it on Audible. This is the way I do all of my Star Wars reading, or listening, if you will. And it really helps out with the planet names, and it has more of a cinematic experience. So it's kind of halfway in between. You're listening to it, but you're getting the sounds, the noises. You're getting
the music.
Oh, it's so good.
It's incredible, yeah.
So we're going to be back next week, guys. We have the next episode of Star Wars Rebels Season 3, Imperial Super Commandos. Looks like a bit of a Mandalore episode, which I'm really excited about. Probably exploring a bit more of Sabine's backstory here. And again, hitting on these concepts that Rebels isn't just about Thrawn this season. I'm missing my Thrawn a bit here.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be another couple episodes before we get him again.
Think so.
But I'm happy with these episodes. We've been ecstatic that, I'm not going to call them filler episodes, but these in-between episodes between the main story points that they developed at the start of the season, these have all been great, and I'm expecting nothing less from that.
Can't wait, and I hope we get to see the return of, I think it's the Dark Blade. Darth Maul was holding it down in Clone Wars with this Dark Blade, so I think we did see trailers already that Sabine gets this blade, so maybe this will be the episode where we see it. I'm crossing my fingers for it. Yeah.
So one more time, guys, get out there and get the Ahsoka book. Give it a read. Give it a listen. If you're interested in Marvel, this week on our other podcast, The Nerd Room, we're going to be discussing Doctor Strange in comics, followed by a review of the Doctor Strange movie the following week. So tune into that if you're interested. Every Thursday, we're laying it down, talking about broad-spanning nerd news, as well as the next couple of weeks we're going to be discussing Doctor Strange.
Sorcerer Supreme, can't wait.
Looking forward to it. I've went back and read a couple of the old comic books.
No way.
Yes, so I'm really looking forward to discussing this week Doctor Strange.
Awesome, can't wait. Stay tuned, guys.
All right, guys, until next week, this is Star Wars Rebels Alert signing off. I'm Tim.
I'm Troy.